On August 11, 2020, the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, or WEKH, released the State of Women's Entrepreneurship in Canada 2020. It was their first annual report. It states that women are majority owners of about 15.6% of small, medium enterprises with one or more employees. So roughly about 114,000 companies. That was in a 2017 statistic. But women account for over 37% of self-employed Canadians, or according to a 2019 statistic, 1,050,000. This report highlights some of the barriers facing women entrepreneurs, but it also shows that women are making great strides in business ownership and are ready to take on the world. In this session, we will share about resources and programs available to support women entrepreneurs in their quest to go global. And you will meet guest speakers Karima-Catherine, Casey, Goundiam, a serial entrepreneur with a global reach, and Melissa Malcolm, founder and principal consultant at Malcolm HR Consulting, Inc. A little bit about our guest speakers, because I'm really delighted. So this report that I just mentioned really spurred on this idea that let's talk about women entrepreneurship. Let's talk about these new markets. And it was great because I had the opportunity, one, to be a program coordinator for our women's entrepreneurship program, of which Melissa is part of. So I'm excited about that. And two, because this is where I met Casey. And Casey has such an interesting story about how she's been able to journey from going local to global. And that's part of what we're going to highlight today is their stories, our stories, and coming together that way. Casey is the founder and CEO of B2Bee Match.com. A borderless business matchmaking platform where small and medium enterprises connect in order to outsource, scale, and find clients. The platform soft launched in early 2020. It is now fully launched, just when the business world needs new ways to network. Casey is also the founder and CEO of Red Dot Digital, which she launched in 2014 to bring her forward-thinking, data-driven approach to the world of digital strategy and management consulting. Red Dot Digital helps clients evolve their businesses, achieve their objectives, and manage change in today's digital world. Melissa Malcolm is the founder and principal consultant at Malcolm HR Consulting, Inc., an HR consulting business that aims to help startups and small and medium-sized businesses within Durham region and the GTA. With over 20 years of diverse human resources management and leadership experience, she has been responsible for partnering with and providing solutions-oriented advice to business owners, managers, and executives. She has extensive hands-on experience leading HR initiatives, including organizational design, recruitment, and onboarding, employee relations, and talent management. As a participant of the BACD's Women's Entrepreneurship Program, Melissa started Malcolm HR Consulting, Inc. out of a passion for HR and to help business owners recognize the value of implementing HR practices early in their business. Recognizing that HR beyond hiring employees is not often viewed as important, she is driven to change the narrative about HR and its value in supporting the achievement of business success. Her goal is to be your partner in HR. I know there is so many of us in here, and I want to welcome our two guest speakers for taking time out in their day and sharing with us their stories and their experiences so far in this amazing journey called women's entrepreneurship. So welcome everybody. Welcome Casey. Welcome Melissa. So first I want to just go through, well, before I forget, I want to just ask, I'm going to increase the size, but I want to get a picture of as many people as I can in this session. So I'm going to do a screenshot, and I'm giving fair warnings because you might just be in this picture. All right. So we've got, yeah, everybody fix their hair, do their thing just in case. Okay, great. Casey and Melissa especially, because you guys are the part of the guest speakers. And I'm going to, oh, and great, Teresa is back with us. So, well, I know she's with us, but I mean, her picture is back with us. I'm going to go back to this one. Here, perfect. Okay, everybody, we're going to go cheese. The cheeky cheese. There we go. And go up, smile. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Whew. That part's done because I would have totally forgotten because I'm going to get right into this. And I'm going to see if there's any. So it's a very simple agenda. We're going to go through some statistics of what the findings are. And then we are going to talk about the programs out there to support. And then we're going to talk about the global entrepreneurship. My encouragement is, again, ask the questions in the chat box if something piques your interest. Participate in the polls. We have about 3 polls that we're going to be doing just to get a pulse, to feel the pulse of on Durham region women entrepreneurship. And Casey and Melissa are going to share some of their personal experiences as we reach some of these points. And I will engage others too as we go along. So here goes. Who is ready for some information? Just by show of hands or something. Yes, okay, great. Everybody's still alive. All right, excellent. So key statistics, 85% of Canadian women stated that they were interested in starting a business. Only 16% of Canadian small and medium-sized businesses are owned by women. That's quite a difference. By advancing gender equality and women's participation in the economy, Canada could add up to 150 billion in GDP. So there's room for growth in this department. Some simple characteristics. So what I went to the Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub had this amazing event where they talked about women going into the global markets and everything. And this is where I happened to be introduced to KC. And these are some of my notes. And I found it really interesting. They're saying they're often newer businesses, and they're often underfinanced, and partly because there's a sense we're discouraged borrowers, an issue across the sectors. There's a confidence gap, lack of knowledge of trade policies and opportunities. So sometimes we're overwhelmed by where do we start? And sometimes it's, well, if we start, are we even going to succeed? So we almost stop before we try. But this can be addressed by doing sessions like this, by having events like this, by being introduced to organizations like we have and will be throughout this week, by raising awareness and providing support. Most women-led businesses are micro businesses. So they're quite small. Usually it's self-employed. So it's a one-person operation, or maybe not more than 5. Okay, I would say most of you have. So it says here 72% of you have responded to this question. So that's good. So here we go. 72% says they feel empowered as an entrepreneur. 28% said no, not yet. How long do you feel it takes to feel empowered? So actually I can end this poll and I can share it and everyone can see what it says. And I love this. It says by the 3rd year is when most people are feeling empowered. So there we go. We can look at that. So 72% said they're feeling empowered. That's actually very exciting news. And 44 of you felt that it was by the 3rd year. So that's also very much in keeping with a typical lifespan of a business. The entrepreneurial life is that 3 to 5 year mark. But it's interesting that 39% of you said, I'm already feeling empowered. That's actually music to my ears. That's pretty awesome. So that's pretty awesome. So here is what their poll said. 84%. So we were really close because they said 79%. But then they said 67% of women feel it takes up to 5 years to feel empowered. So they say up to 5 years. So it's very possible that 3 to 5 year mark is in there. And I think that's realistic. So that shows that we're in that range. It shows the Durham region, we're in that range. So the seed is planted, it's starting to grow. It needs more nourishment, and it's now time to bear fruit. And I feel that I often say to my clients, in those first 18 months, yes, as long as 18 months, you're in what I describe the discovery phase. You're learning about yourself, you're learning about your environment, the marketplace that you want to do business in. And it's an exciting time and just a time for discovery, for validating, for testing, for making sure that you're onto something that needs more, nourishment and everything else. So here's what's happening with regards to COVID. as scary as it still is, because I won't say the scary parts are over yet, but it's starting to level the field as women are able to move digitally and therefore globally more easily. Because prior to that, being health and service oriented based and also being very much grounded in the environment, so the marketplace they're in, a digital world is removing some of those borders, which is exciting. What's also exciting, well, you guys saw that. I just was quite lost going into my first Facebook live feed. Hi to everybody who's watching, because I completely bundled that up. I know Teresa's like, okay, we're going to test it out. Didn't have a chance yet to test it out. So there's our human side. But what's amazing is because we're all in a similar situation, we're more forgiving and more compassionate and more patient with each other as we're adjusting to these new norms. And it's okay to be home. And I love it because this one was it's a global trade economic forum that we were, a Toronto Global Economic Forum that I was part of in October. I think it was end of October. So these are some of my notes from there. But I love it because now too, as women, we have more live examples. But they're now in our time and they're in our space that we can see them on television. We can read about them in books and everything else. But in New Zealand is a great example. The Prime Minister was breastfeeding a 5-month-old baby as she's leading a country through a pandemic. Like, that is pretty brilliant. And being as human as she possibly can, doing it all the way. We're seeing the leadership showing up more authentically, and we're finding there are community champions within our own communities that are showing us the way. So it's exciting because it's showing us that others are doing it, and so can we. Some more statistics. There has been a 30% increase in women-owned businesses in the last 10 years. Of Canada's 1.2 million small to medium-sized businesses, fewer than 200,000 are women-owned. That's crazy. That's a crazy statistic to me. And 6.6% of Canadian women engaged in established business ownership. It actually ranks 5th among innovation-based countries. So this is Canada ranking 5th in innovation-based countries, but 6.6% of these innovation-based businesses are women-led. So it's interesting to read that. So my next poll question, and this one I'm going to open the last one about what reason was it difficult to obtain funding. So let's launch the second poll, be an issue. So I'm going to share with everyone what the results were. So have you used a business loan? Interesting. Only 80% of you have. Did you find it difficult? 67% said yes. And here are some of the reasons. And this is what I thought was interesting. So credit score, I did not think I would get one, so I did not try. And I find that's really interesting. So for many of us, we didn't even try because we thought already that, no, we won't meet it. So some of these, we know there are ways. So credit score, we can clean up our credit score. And oftentimes I say to clients, start the discussion early with your banker, let them know your goals, and you'll be amazed at how they can help you set it up. So if it's credit score that you're trying to establish a better credit score, they actually will help you do that. And by engaging them as part of the solution, you find that the support comes quicker because the relationship is being built, and they actually, if they're seeing that you're taking this seriously and putting in all the right steps, you find it's a lot easier. Business not open long enough. Unfortunately, that's something a lot of us face, and we do have to then, ride it out until that timing becomes long enough. The industry is too risky. That's probably one that's the hardest to change, because if that industry is risky, maybe it's too young, maybe it's only just starting out, which we know for some of the cannabis type businesses. The policies, drone businesses a few years back was in a similar situation as the cannabis industries right now. Policies were still being made, protocols and regulations are still being formed. So it was really hard for financing institutions to put money behind something because nobody was 100% sure how it was all going to roll out. Not enough collateral, for sure. They want to know, well, if the business doesn't take off, how are you going to secure the loan? What do you have that will help secure it? Not strong enough evidence of a strong cash flow, well, that one you could go back to the board and really try and work through that and have the right financial documents and everything else to support it. But the last one, which is the one that I hear so often, and that falls back in that one of those first statistics about the confidence gap. Did not think I would get one, so I did not try. And so that's something that we really want to help women entrepreneurs overcome, because there are ways of, to approach it. There are ways to better prepare for it. And that's one of the things that we can help you with at the BACD. And I always encourage, start with engaging with your banker or that investor early on. So there's a great funny saying, if you want money, ask for advice. So go in and ask for advice and counseling that way versus the other way, because otherwise you're going to be asking for money and they're going to give you advice. So you want to work together with them to start that. Okay, I'm going to open this section off and I'm going to ask our guest speakers what their journey has been with regards to financing. Like, have you had the need yet, and how did you overcome it? So I'll start with Melissa and then I'll ask Casey. So Melissa, you can answer it first. That would be great.
Hi, everyone. So from my experience, my business was relatively new when I went to the bank. I went to the bank that I pretty much have all my holdings, all my assets in, and worked with my financial advisor there who knew I was starting my own business. And she put me on to the small business loan manager. I was able to obtain a line of credit and a business credit card. I did it more so just to have the funds in case I need it. But with my business, I didn't really need a loan at the time. Still don't right now, but I like to have it there as a, fallback safety net, purchase some things to start up my business. But other than that, for me, the experience was relatively easy in terms of obtaining the loan. But I echo what Patrice is saying. You don't know until you ask. And so, work with that person, whoever you trust in the bank. If you have a good relationship, go to them, have that conversation and see what they could do to assist you. And again, there are other means of obtaining loans as well. It's not just traditional bank, but if you have a relationship with someone, I suggest start there.
Mm-hmm. Fabulous. Thank you very much, Melissa. What about you, Casey?
So for me, I have two companies to compare with. So when I started with Red Dot 5 years ago, digital was pretty new, although it wasn't, but it seems to be very new to anybody who wasn't in digital. So the sales cycle was a bit complex. The banks would ask stuff like, what's your projections, or what are you trying to, you don't have tangibles. So I quickly just left any type of conversations with the bank. I just kept relationship with my bankers, but I wasn't going for loans, and I didn't really need any loans per se. I had cash flow, personal cash flow, which I invested in my company, and very soon I had enough contracts to allow me to have profits. What I did though was incorporate really fast, because that made a difference in the credibility and legitimacy of the company. And then when came the time to launch B2Bee Match, which was a completely new platform, completely different, I had all the assets from Red Dot to fall back on and to be able to reinvest that money into B2B. So per se, I don't really need loans. But like Melissa was saying, I like to have this exercise available in case I actually need it. But to be quite frank, I just find that banks and financial or institutions, specifically in Canada, they have a great discourse, but the reality was very different. They tend to ask you things that just don't exist as a business owner on your first or second year. Even the financials don't exist unless you're incorporated. So it was too complicated and I had zero patience. So I just went my own way.
Okay, thanks, Casey. And it's, at the end of the day, a loan, there's a cost component to a loan for sure. So you do want to be sure that it's something that you can afford to pay back. You want to be sure that that you are ready for it, right? That you know, as I've heard with the financial institutions and investors, that it has to be for something tangible or something specific. So we don't just borrow money for operations, day-to-day operations. We borrow money for something very specific. And for some businesses, it is necessary, and it is considered a business expense. So sometimes it's much, they do counsel about investing what you can afford, but then at the end of the day, if you do need it, just recognize that it's part of the running of the business and it is a business expense. And I love how Casey mentioned about having a corporation. So that's something that's also very interesting about women entrepreneurship or business owners. Many of us do not have incorporations. We do not incorporate. And that can be sometimes our downfall. Now, there are different milestones that you would have accountants and lawyers and other business, even banking institutions, etc., where they would encourage incorporation to happen when that milestone hits. So there are pros and cons to everything. You just want to become more aware and educated in it. So I'm going to quickly look in the chat box because I saw there may be a couple of questions. Let's see. So I've got private messages and I've got, so I'm looking through all of them. There we go. All right. So Teresa, thanks so much for joining us. And I know she's got another session to go to. Mary Scarlett has a question about being new to country. Would you be eligible? So again, Mary, first of all, welcome. Great to have you with us. But the requirements would be the same in the sense you have to establish residency or citizenship in the country in order to first establish a business, and it's not so much determined on the eligibility per se, but it's the business's ability and the way to secure whatever that loan is. So time is one of the 2 to 3 years seems to be a normal time span for new businesses because they're, as Casey had mentioned, they're now financial documents to support and show historical data of how the business is growing and what direction it's taking, as well as you've established a credit history is a very common term that we hear when persons are new to the country, or like the 18-year-old Kayla, I think it is, it has to be established. So it's establishing some sort of a relationship or credit history with the bank. So that's part of it.
Patrice, if you don't mind, I just want to relate one of my experiences, which was extremely upsetting at the time. I think it was year number 3. I had made over $250,000, and I think more than that. And I was incorporated, and I had a pipeline of projects. And I had asked for a credit card, another credit card. And the bank had me run around asking collaterals, I own a home, and whatever else. And at the end, they asked me to co-sign with my husband because he had a 9-to-5 job, although I was making more money than he was. And I was, at that time, I knew the banks were not working for us. Like at that point, I was like, you know what, all this marketing messages are great, but you guys are back in the 50s and their message was, you're a high earner, but you're too risky for us. And that's when I knew I needed to incorporate. I needed a strong legal team, a strong accounting team. I literally needed to completely shift the way I was doing business. So it was not in my 3rd year, I think it was my 2nd year. And it was just unbelievable.
So it sounds like you hit all the the reasonings behind it. And at the end of the day, so it was a high risk. It was still relatively new for them, and you weren't yet incorporated. So it was. I
was incorporated at that time. I had incorporated and so I had everything. I was the perfect student on paper, but they still wanted a co-signature for this card, who was a 9-to-5 job earner. And to me, this didn't fit with hey, we're a knowledge economy and we focus on, we foster entrepreneurship. And this is what also I have to say pushed me to accelerate my exporting. because I was bringing in currency that was stronger than Canadian. So I was making more money faster. So, but that's for another segment.
Yeah, no, but that's exciting. And that's why I love this conversation, because it shares with us, okay, so this is, I'm getting a pushback here, but you didn't go, oh, that's it, I'm giving up, I'm not doing this anymore. No, you took that, it fueled the fire in you, and you went even bigger, which is incredible.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important message there, right? There are solutions for all of these, and it's really crazy because I know a lot of people who are self-employed. I know a lot of professionals. So whether you're an accountant even, or an accountant that's all in business and everything, but because they're self-employed, they still have a similar situation. Like it's.
You know what? Even and I don't, and I know there's somebody from FIDEV, so I'm going to be nice, but. But you know that even selling a service versus intangible is a problem. And, for example, I hire over 25, like I have a salary, a mass of salary I pay every month of I don't know how much, like a lot. I pay over 25 people. But because they were contractors, they didn't fall under full time. It's only when COVID hit that it kind of registered that, oh, by the way, yes, those people, I'm actually, it's a living. And I didn't, it's just very complicated. I think the policy side of things versus the reality of being an entrepreneur, like you have to be rogue. You have to go rogue if you want to survive, I think. And you just have to be extremely resourceful.
Yeah, I will use that word. We have to be extremely resourceful.
And resilient.
Resilient, absolutely.
What I heard, Patrice. That's what I heard, Patrice. I heard resourceful, creative, all those words. Yeah, that's what I heard. No problem.
Awesome. Good. No, that's wonderful. And thank you for sharing, Casey and Melissa. And that's it exactly. And for everyone who shared in the chat box, yeah, absolutely. But why I raise this question is because it's part of the growth and development in every business. And we're going to come to a time where it's like, okay, where am I going to get that additional money to scale or to accomplish what I want to, etc. And yes, Sarah, absolutely right. Sarah is saying the world is changing. The world of work is changing. And COVID has made the change happen more quickly. Yes, I see there's a lot of exponential changes coming down at every level. So it's in the banks, it's in the governments, it's in so many levels. And I think too, this has broke open, that Pandora's box of, well, how are people making a living? What is happening? I'm learning more about that entrepreneurship and everything else. Yes, absolutely, Wendy. Being resourceful, yes, is a natural part of that's right.
Patrice, if I could just add.
Yes.
So Kayla, the teenager that has been in the chat box, is actually my daughter. And,
okay.
She has her own business. She's 16. She's had it for a few years now. But I know, as we're trying to foster and empower our kids to be business owners, if they have that entrepreneurial spirit, yes, it has been very difficult. There's rules around finance with respect to age. But for someone like her who has her own business, who wants to scale, who wants to grow, sometimes having that financial setback, as you will, can be a challenge, right? So, we are very resourceful in terms of how we support her. She's very good at her business and promoting herself and generating that profit and that revenue. But it's not just women, it's also teenagers and young adults and their ability to become those successful entrepreneurs that we know they have the ability to become.
Sorry, it's Frank again. Can I just step in with a couple of things? I'm just thinking, I wanted to share, and not from the FedDev or Government of Canada side, but from a personal side, I remember my father was an entrepreneur. He started his business with my uncle in 1974. They ran that business until 2004. Until my dad passed away, actually. My uncle became disabled. My dad took it on alone with my uncle, but, a reduced capacity. But They were successful. They managed to, bring up 2 families on one business. And they got into, at a certain point, when they paid off their own homes that they were living in with families, with us, they started to invest in other property.
Yeah.
And one of the properties was up for renewal for the mortgage. And in 30 years, or it might have been 20 years at that point, or 25 years, however long it was, my uncle was older. My dad was 5 years younger. They were older. So that's also an issue, I think. So we look at the very young, but we also look at people who, my dad and my uncle could have retired. They didn't want to. My dad worked until he passed away. He was a worker and an entrepreneur. He did many different things. Some people like to work. And the ageism on both sides, I think, is something that we probably as institutions, but society, maybe even government, needs to, reconsider. But I remember when they went to refinance their mortgage at the bank that they had been with personally and professionally for over 25 years, denied them. And my dad was like such a nerd in the sense that he was never late on any kind of payment ever, like taxes, stuff at home, business, nothing ever. And they just said, I don't know what excuse they gave them. And they went to another bank and they were approved the same day.
Yeah.
So I guess my point was also shop within the banks and within the institutions that are available, because they are different. Hopefully there are some strengths and weaknesses amongst all of them. And then the other one about the 16-year-old, Melissa, your daughter, I know that they are looking at 18-year-olds to 39. It used to be 34 for futurepreneurs, for the youth market, for the youth entrepreneurs. And I know that she's only 16. But I'm wondering if you have gone, and if you haven't, if you go anyways, because maybe they will look at that and say, you know what, let's make an exception. Or, you know what, we can't give her money right now, but let's do other stuff with her. Exactly. And then when she hits 18, we can start giving her money if it's, not legally an option. But that also triggers them that, you know what, maybe we have to look at 18. And if people can work at 16 and get an SIN number in Canada, maybe we have to consider 16 instead of 18. Because they still have to meet all the requirements. They still have to have a great business plan and know what they're talking about, right? So anyways, I just wanted to, just those 2 things kept popping in my mind. I just wanted to share. Thanks.
No, and share. That's awesome, Franca. Thank you very much. I know one of the criteria for some of those, especially I guess with the 16-year-old in this particular case, is that can she run the business full time? Like that's a huge factor. And if they're looking at, okay, student full time, until that happens, there's that little abnormally, and you don't want to encourage full-time business over education just yet, right? Like but again, this whole thing is breaking barriers. It's breaking or changing everything, really, because we're now teaching online. We're now, like, so much is changing. And for whatever reason, innovation, right? Innovation. But we're going to carry on. Just, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, but lots of, so thanks everyone for sharing. We've got 1 hour left, and I know we still have quite a bit that we want to go through. So that's it. We're going to take it. Thank you. Okay. Isn't this exciting? Well, yeah, I can feel the heat in this room. All right, 14% of women utilize a business loan. So look at that. So yes, it's a very small percentage of us that go, oh yeah, I'm going to need money, so I'm going to go for a loan. 37% surveyed found it difficult, and for a variety of reasons that everybody shared today, for sure. And I think the most frustrating one is when they told, well, you need a cosigner. Well, I was very fortunate. Mine was the reverse. I had the better credit rating than my husband at the time. So I was the one that was doing this, and we both went in and we still needed a cosigner. So his uncle had to step in. So, I mean, it happens. In our case, it didn't matter about the gender, but I do hear that often regarding the women. So that's really an eye opener. But there you go. If there were equal numbers of women and men entrepreneurs, the world GDP could rise by 5 trillion and by 80 billion in Canada. So if that was more equality, right? Like it's quite something. In 2018, the Canadian government invested 5 billion to double the number of women-owned businesses by 2025. And you're going to learn more about those different programs in a short while. Canadian women rank first in terms of involvement with newer businesses. So yay us. That's pretty awesome. So poll number 3. Here we go. Poll number 3. What motivated you to start a business? So more than one answer is good. So what's just really interesting, so I'm going to share with you guys what the main report was, and again, just to see how this compares to the two. So motivations, I don't know if you guys can see my screen. I'm going to put this on the side so that everyone can see. Motivators, and look at us here. Financial independence, 44%. We're at 20%. None of us said flexibility. That's interesting. Better balance for work and family life. So we were at 20%, they had 36. And what's interesting is the number beside it is for males. So the males were a little lower at 30%, but it's actually high. I felt it was pretty high. And then creating own environment, I thought that was interesting. So we're pretty low on that one, but it was relatively high, and men are much less on that. So they're not too concerned about that part. Oh, am I reading it? Yeah, no, I'm reading it right. Make more money. The men said, yes, I want to make more money. We didn't say anything. None of us wanted to make more money. That is hilarious. But you notice it does dwindle. Pursue passion, 16%. So we're close on that too. Ability to set own and deadlines. Look how close we were on that one, 13 and 14%. Create, oh no, that was 6%. Okay. And then create jobs. Inspire others, 6%, and create jobs. Wow. So there you go. I find that interesting. Let's see what everyone else is saying in here. Not having to choose between being a professional and full-time mom. I did both with a baby and grew a successful. Yeah, that's great. They said never get into a mother's way. Like when they've set sights on something, they will move mountains. That's it. That's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting because it, again, it shows where we're at and how, how are we compared to the bigger picture, even in Durham. All right. I'm just going to put this on the side for a minute. So what else? The top motivators for starting a business, challenges for business women with experience. So Casey, Melissa, and all my business women in the house, finding new customers, they say, is very challenging. Sustaining long-term success, I find that interesting. So that's really, really high. Raising funding. And based on what everyone's saying, it's actually not too bad because if I can do my own sales and I can fund myself, but yeah, it can be difficult. Finding employees, I'm going to say the right employees. Work-life balance, finding a support network, which I'm glad that these things drop because I'm hoping that people now recognize that we have a great support network out there. It's just really understanding which one fits for you, your timing, your energies and everything else. Asking for help and guidance. I think women have always been pretty good about that. Making tech decisions, I thought was impressive that it was relatively low. Negotiating contracts, good on us ladies, that's also very low. Retaining employees and making decisions. So it starts going down. So I thought that was pretty impressive because that's showing that we can make a decision, we can keep employees and everything else. So once established, we go well with it. Funding advice from Canadian businesswomen. So where would you direct more funding? So my guest speakers, hold on tight because I'm going to open the floor with you and I'll ask Casey to start when we do this. So where would you direct more funding? According to this report, they would encourage other women business owners to do it in advertising and marketing. Anyone surprised by that? The other one is to increase or grow a safety net. I think it was Franca was saying with her family, when the money came in, they used some of that money to make investments in other things that will create more investments. So I do hear that a lot. You know, as the money comes in, invest it so that it's generating another revenue stream. Invest in newer technology, creating new product, hiring more staff, better benefits to employees, move to a bigger location, or do more social or charitable good. So it's really interesting is those top two: advertising and marketing, and increase or grow safety net. So Casey, taking it to you first, would you agree to this advice or would you give other type of advice?
To be quite honest, I don't even understand the question. I don't know what they're trying to say here. So if you want to clarify it for me, that would be great.
So basically it's saying, where would you, if you had more funding, where would you advise a women entrepreneur to apply that funding? Where, if there were sales or cash flow, right, get an investor, where would you apply that money?
It really depends on the business. I would separate it from, do you have services or do you have products? Then what's your objectives? So having a plan actually works really well. So working with you, for example, with the business advisory would really help them and map out what is their next step. You know, and then once you understand your objective is, okay, so you need to hire maybe more people, or you need marketing. Marketing is a no-brainer. You need it regardless. It doesn't matter. Actually, this is something that it would be worth, you know, getting money very early on to invest in marketing. That is one of my advice. And don't try to do it yourself if you're not a professional. Hire somebody. So it really, you know, for me, very early on, I invested in marketing. I invested in a business developer who ended up telling me that I was the best person to sell my business. So he quit after 3 months. Then I invest, but it's just to show that, you know, I respected that. Invest in an accountant, invest in a law firm, and you don't have to give them $10,000 up front. It can be just hours. You can just have your contracts verified. My lawyer saved me 3 times from big contracts that, you know, could have gone completely sideways. So verify your contracts, especially if you're doing work with international. I invested in international traveling very, very early on as well. It does take time. You decide to want to go international, it's not going to give you an ROI within a year or 2. It takes 3, 4 years, 5 years or more, unless you're moving products, and that's a bit different. So I want to say it really depends on what your map is, and don't hesitate to map out the future that you want for your company. The last thing I would say is invest in a place, like in a physical place. I never did. Nobody understood until COVID. So I'm, you know, okay, again, it's good. And don't rush into hiring people either. I know a lot of people who have, and sadly, it's not necessarily the answer for everything.
Right. Now, can you just clarify about investing in a place? Do you mean like the business owning a physical location?
Yes, think about owning a location. There's a lot of other things that I had pre-COVID already advised to clients of mine. I think there's this traditional mentality that you need to have full-time and an office. I did neither of those. And my business is doing really well. So I think we just have to rethink a little bit how to invest your money. It doesn't mean you're not going to hire people, or it doesn't mean you're not going to hire a place when you need it, a venue, but this whole thinking that you have to be tied to places and people, to me, it's very old school.
Okay, great, thank you. What about you, Melissa? What advice would you give? Funding advice. If you got money, where would you invest it?
Oh, I don't know.
Where would you suggest someone to invest it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on the stage of business that you're at as well. I mean, for me, I'm starting out. It's relatively new for me. So, you know, where would I direct my money? Probably for me at this stage of the game would be advertising and marketing, really getting my presence out there. But there's so many ways of doing that, right? So when we have the issues of obtaining funding, you have to be creative how you go about in doing that. But if you do have some money, I agree with Casey. I think, you know, the whole notion of having a brick and mortar or having a physical location is not necessarily true. And I think we need to look at what the business is that you're offering, the stage that you're at, and what is the funding that you have to play around with, right, so to speak. I think that would really then come up with how you better direct that funding and what you do with it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Haley asked about other, and that was a great question because it doesn't specify what other is, but I think Casey mentioned what could possibly other, and it could be professional fees. It could be potentially equipment or supplies that they would have invested in, something more tangible, but they don't share what it was. So I'm assuming it's just assumptions here. But like both ladies said, I think the important thing is to have a plan, to really understand what it is, the goals and objectives that you're about to set up for, really understanding the cost involved in realizing those goals and objectives, because that's going to help you identify what's needed. Is it going to be what type of resources or what type of expertise is needed? And for each one of those, there's a cost component. So whatever funding you're receiving, you want to be sure that it's going to be invested in something that's going to allow you to generate a cash flow that you need to keep on going. And as Casey also mentioned, I too, as business owner back in the day, I had 4 silent partners. I called them my 4 silent partners, and certainly funding advice was in there. The lawyer for sure. I used to say, if it was a midnight call, who's the person I'm going to call next? And this is business based, so it wouldn't be my mother. My mother would not be taking a business emergency call. It would be my lawyer, if there's a legal component involved. It would be my insurance broker. So I had a good relationship with the insurance broker. It would be possibly my accountant and possibly my banker. And any new project or service that I was about to launch or share, these would also be my informal advisory board. What legal do I need to think about? What insurance or exposure am I going to be, or risk am I going to be exposed to? Let's crunch numbers to see when I'm going to break even and start making money. And then I'm going to my bank and going, hey, can I get your advice?
That's a really good point, Patrice. One of the things I've done 2 years ago was to have an advisory board. Mm-hmm. So 5 people who I would go to for very strategic decisions. And I didn't want to make them a board of directors because I wanted to make sure that I still kept that direction and control. But there are people who informally were already doing what you just said. So I formally put them into a board, and I said, now you are going to be responsible with me of the growth of the company. So
there you go. Excellent. Excellent. And I think in this day and age, and I say this day and age in what I call the digital world, because it wasn't like this 30, 35 years ago. But I would also include there now my social media or digital marketing. So I'm talking the experts that know and understand that platform, because I don't. And as Casey also mentioned, there's a great saying, do what you do best. Hire out the rest. It rhymes. Do what you do best. Hire out the rest. It's so important. It's so important. All right. So carrying on. This is one of the resources page, and that is where we gathered a lot of the information that I just shared with you. So we will share that with you again, along with the other resources page. But now I just want to check in and literally just going to look for faces in the room, see how everyone's doing. Is everyone still with me? And we'll carry on to the next phase. So a thumbs up, a heart, or what have you. Yes, thank you very much. Okay, awesome. Awesome. So everyone's with me. We've got about 45 minutes to go. Thank you, Nadal. Okay. So here we go. On to the next. So the programs that are now available to us as female entrepreneurs or women entrepreneurs. I'm just going to check to see if there's anything in the chat box. No. I'm trying to manage all the different screens. It's hilarious because it's like the back end. It's like, when you look at a rug, a weave or what have you, and you see it's so pretty at the front, but then when you turn it around, you see that's what it feels like on this. You continue success that way. I want to ask Casey. Casey, have you ever participated in a entrepreneurial program or been part of, maybe by other means, an entrepreneurial program?
No.
Okay.
But it's not surprising. As I said, I think I have very little patience with, which is very funny. I'm a project manager by training, so I know process, but because I know process so well, I know how to also bypass the process. And I tend to just go, I'm very driven with results and extremely driven with, for me, money wasn't a motivation because I loved winning. So as soon as I won, I was on to the next win, right? So a contract was great, but I was like, okay, now can I double that contract? Can I triple that contract? And this is something I want to say. I want to go back a couple of, step back and say, we talk a lot about women entrepreneurship. We talk a lot about how do we support each other. I'm at the next stage where I'm looking at big funding, huge funding. And it's even more lonely there because they always tell you there's no women, or if you are, it's 0.00 something. It doesn't matter. You will always have a reason why being a woman is, seen as being the only one or something like that. I just want to tell people, don't stop at having a side business. Don't think, oh, I'm going to have a business. It's just going to be something on the side, or it's going to be good. I'm going to be able to pay my bills and is happy. Think big, like dream big. This is very important. You can actually build businesses, not only that are going to be your own businesses, but going to create a legacy for your kids. And I think men are maybe either socialized like that, or maybe that's part of their DNA. I don't know. But I think as women, we have to get over this and just, risk and go and ask. No has never killed anyone. No is the beginning of a conversation. So this is probably why I don't also join groups, is because usually a women group is going to be softer, is going to be more, is going to be geared towards women. I don't care. I can be in a man's group. I can be in people who don't even speak my language. It doesn't matter to me. If they're an objective, then I'll go. And this is how I approach everything. I don't think too much about it. I find that as soon as you go with women group, you're asked to think more, to plan more, to be perfect more. And that's not my philosophy. My philosophy is try, fail, learn, go. That's all it is. And men do it. And that's probably why they get faster being less good as we are,
Well, I hope Melissa can share that. Yeah, this is not your typical.
Yeah, it's not. And I have to say though, Casey, and I mean, I agree with you on some points, but with respect to this program, it wasn't like that in terms of that traditional, what you might think of in terms of a women's group. But I'd say men have groups as well. Yeah. They just have
they do.
They have it in different ways. Look at the golf clubs. Yeah. Right? Look at the men's clubs that are out there. There's a lot of different opportunities. And I think, by all means, this isn't the only program that I've been in. I want to say I'm members of different groups or different networking groups. I think it's how you put into it what you get out of it. And you get out of
I understand. And to, and I'm going to just step in and say, I'm obviously having to do a blanket statement here. This is not about my bio. This is about, hopefully giving, insights. I'm part of a lot of boards. I'm part of a lot of things. I get it. Like I'm in tech. So usually I will be the only woman, if not the only woman, definitely one of the only minorities around. Yeah. So it's kind of that mentality that I had to push forward. And yes, there's differences. I've been in groups where it was only women and groups if it was only men, and I've been myself and only myself, and I've seen a huge difference in how the information is shared. And definitely, I think men groups are even more numerous than women group, but they just do it differently. They, it's a different process.
Yeah,
completely.
for sure. And this was not meant to put anyone on the spot. I was just curious to know what sort of training, entrepreneurship, sort of mentorship or anything else, because Casey, funny enough, that's what I fell in love with when I met you on the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub event, because it's like she gets it. And I think that's what the drive is and everything. And what the encouragement is to just share again with people, the women and the men in this group, that there are services, there are resources out there
definitely.
to help you strategize, to help you with your business planning, to help you gain some confidence as you continue on this. And certainly we're not the answers for everything, but we just really want to share that there is opportunity. And this particular one for the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy, as you can see with this list, there's so many throughout Canada. And you'll notice too that the banks are stepping in. And so Scotiabank has a Women Initiative program. So if you're a women-based or business, and you let them know, you become part of that program. So when they talk about the entrepreneurship programs and the strategy, it's creating that support that a lot of women were saying wasn't there. So they're trying to build it up and strengthen it so that we can feel it, that we can see it, and that we can be better prepared as we go forward in the business development. There are other funds. So it's not just grants, it's not just mentorship, it's not just training. There's some amazing ones out there. So like I said, you will get a page with all of these. This one is specific to mentorship. So again, offering the experienced business leaders. I was also curious, Casey, if you were a mentor, because I think it's a natural thing with you that you do the mentorship, not necessarily formally, but I'm sure there are people that have over the years that you've certainly helped in your experience. Just by being who you are, you help.
Well,
I love it.
I was going to say, I've actually done 3 types of mentoring. When I was in corporate, I did what they call reverse mentoring. So I was mentoring the CEOs at big corporations.
Wow.
Because I have a skill set in digital and transformation. So, and this is what I tell women as well, is if you're very good at what you do, and sadly enough, we have to be very good. Men don't have to be very good, but we have to be very good. And if you're very good at what you do, and no offense to the men, I'm just, again, doing blanket statements here because we don't have the time to go in details. But if you are very good, you can really have an edge. And it gives you an edge that others don't have. So if you use that, you can really advance faster. Then I've done peer mentoring, which is same level, but with other women. And I've done also mentoring. I don't do it in a very formal way, but I do it in. I do a lot of mentoring in informal way. People will come over and over and come to me to ask me questions, and I've seen their career flourish over time. And again, not everybody is going to start where I started. I started late. I think I started my company, I was 40, and I started with a lot of confidence because I knew what I was able to do for corporate. And I was like, if I'm doing this for a company, how come I'm not doing this for myself? So I didn't, not everybody will start this. And this was not my first trial. This was my second. But the first time I was a consultant. This time I wanted to actually have a huge company. So different mindset there.
And you're well on your way. So this is where I met Casey. This was the event. And like I said, the first annual reports have attached that as in the resources page I'm going to share with everyone in a short while. But I love this. And this is something that Casey actually contributed in my notes. She didn't know she was contributing to my notes, but I was jotting down like every word. But I loved it. It was a very clear message. And I think this message is throughout history. When you have something tangible, support is available. It's easier for somebody to support something that they can see, that they can feel, that they can, resonates with them. But if we're not clear, if it's still in our head and it's difficult for us to articulate it, or for us to show it on the same document, it's hard for people to help us help ourselves. And that's something I've seen throughout the years at BACD and in my own years of business. So that includes, this is where we're shifting into the global market, because you have to have a clear plan. And that's what it's there. Understand your markets. If you're doing well in Canada, you can't just take that same formula or same process, etc., and just adapt it in a different country. You want to understand the new marketplace that you're going into. I love, again, Casey had suggested, start with a niche, one country at a time, because it's going to take you time to garner that expertise and understanding of that new marketplace. Position yourself to be able to deliver. Somebody brought that up as well. It might even still be Casey, because like I said, I just furiously wrote all the notes. But before you head out, you want to be sure you're protecting your brand. Protect your intellectual property before you leave your local marketplace and start expanding. Once a concept is proved with an intent to buy, you want to look at all those necessary legal, tax requirements and everything else. So set up those processes carefully. Establish relationships for the get-go. And I know that's Casey's words. Invest in travel. Invest in travel. She used them today. So I know that's her. Partnerships, you want to make sure it's in writing, that there's some sort of reading off the same page. If it's in a different language, get it translated. Everybody has to read off of the same page and understand it. Focus on what you're good at. We've said that a few times already today. Apply for the funding and grants as needed. Ask for deposits up front. And I think, Casey, that was part of your secret sauce, is that you tried as much as possible to get money up front to help with the cash flow as you're going forward. And very, very important, be quick, be flexible to meet your clients. And this was her words, if I remember it correctly, where they are at. So we have to, where they're at and understanding and everything else. So I loved those messages on that day, because I think this can be said for whether we're just starting up, but it was especially true for, okay, you're succeeding where you're at, now you want to transition. And a mistake that I see some clients and small businesses do is that we think we can just replicate what we're already doing into a new marketplace. And that's not always the case. So we have to, it's almost like having another business. And I think, Casey, you mentioned that even going global, it was like starting from scratch because you didn't see the immediate ROI. It does take a few years, right? So do you want to add anything to this?
So, so with me, I'm an immigrant to Canada, so I've been here 20 years, but so I come from Europe and my first language is French. So naturally, when I saw the market in Canada, specifically in Toronto, it was again something that I felt, okay, this is what it is. I analyzed the market really fast and I knew my edge was international because I had lived in multiple countries. So one of my first clients and the biggest client that allowed us to really get that nudge was from a French client that wanted to establish into Canada. So that was really amazing. So what I guess I want to highlight one program, and I think I know you are familiar with that, Can Export. Can Export program. I went to them directly and they had rejected me. I think it was 4 years ago. I wasn't fitting what was a good business for them at the time. And now I have to say they are my best friends. I went back She
didn't take no for an answer.
Yeah, and it was not only no, it was literally like a shade and, oh, you're too small for us. And I was like, okay, well, let's talk about it in a couple of years. And I went back and the program has completely changed as well. The barrier to entry is, lower. They're giving more money. So a lot of smaller businesses can export. So we're in a very lucky place. So Can Export was amazing. I think with exporting, you have to look at the world, especially when we're going with digital. As soon as you're going digital, you're an international business. I don't care what people say. There's no barriers on the internet. There's no frontiers. Nobody asks you for your passport. So you have to be extremely ready. On your plan, your marketing plan has to be international. Which languages are you going to write in? English? What? UK? US? What are we? Canadian? I remember I completely changed our website for B2Bee Match overnight because all of a sudden our biggest market was the US, and Americans would go on the website and randomly ask, is this a UK website and are we allowed to go on there? I was like, whoa, okay, this can't happen. So we literally had to switch to American English because that was the fastest growing market. So I think you just need to think about international, like pockets of opportunities, especially if you're in digital. So
this is the last one that I shared. Again, I picked up most of these from the knowledge of the, oh my goodness, KE Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. It was a WE, yes, Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. So the Organization of Women in International Trade, the Can Export, which Casey had mentioned earlier, Export Development Canada, Global Affairs Canada, especially if you're looking for the world trade and the different markets. Some of these places you'll also find our trade agreements. Yesterday we had, I think it was it was the Ministry of Economic Development, Jobs and Trade that was giving the presentation on these trade agreements. So it's really important to understand, who does Canada have free trade agreements already with? And sometimes that helps as an introductory part to how easy is it now to trade within those countries. And it gives you those guidelines and everything else, the tariffs and some of those other things. Canada Border Services, the Canadian Intellectual Property Office, why they have been added to this list is because, again, protecting your intellectual property. As Casey mentioned, if you're deciding to do digital on an international level, you want to protect some of your intellectual property. And that could be your brand, it could be your name, it could be any specific, maybe even your list of your websites, of some of the pages. So you really want to see what you would be exposing to internationally. Export Magnets is also, I believe, Franca, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a FedDev they're in collaboration with, and they help, again, businesses match with other places, countries that are looking for it. And of course, B2Bee Match. So Casey, I'm leaving this open for you. Can you share a little bit about B2Bee Match and how this helps businesses network and grow their network globally?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Very quickly, B2Bee Match is a matchmaking platform. So we launched in February. For the purpose of this conversation, I'm going to say that we had to completely pivot a couple of things because of COVID. But actually, it turned out to be beneficial for us. So going back to B2Bee Match, so it's a business matchmaking platform designed for SMEs specifically, but it's not just SMEs. We're bringing on huge partners, including governments, private companies. We're working on a procurement model to allow big companies to go and source smaller organizations. So it's like online dating for businesses. And the beauty of this is there's a couple of angles that I like to share here. Is if you're women-led business, then you get highlighted. If you're a diverse business, then you get highlighted. And if you want to do business internationally, then you absolutely have the opportunity to do it. If you want to do business within Canada and Ontario, that's great as well. So it's really the next level of networking, matchmaking, and expanding your business on the platform.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Casey.
No problem.
Melissa, do you want to offer any closing remarks? Anything about HR, Malcolm HR? What's happening next to your company?
So looking to still grow and expand my client base. I'm really here to support, like I said, small and medium-sized businesses with HR within their organizations, and really just help you as a business owner implement and set up that HR portion of your business. And I do find a lot of times when I hear about some of the things that business owners are dealing with, they don't realize it's HR related, and they don't realize that there's support out there. They think they have to do it themselves, or the wrong people in their organization are dealing with it. And it could sometimes lead to more trouble than they realize. But having that good foundation at the beginning is really what's key. and then having that ongoing support when needed is also invaluable.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you, Casey and Melissa. Really appreciate you taking your time and sharing with us some of your stories, but most important, your passion and your enthusiasm. And I hear you, Casey, and I hear you, Melissa. Yes, women, you know, all around. And you're right. It's not a women versus man thing. It's a economic thing, right? So thank you so much for today. Thank you to everybody who participated and shared in the chat box, who participated in the polls. I really appreciate your engagement. Anna, thanks for sharing your story as well. We hope you leave us today feeling empowered and with more information to help you move forward with your business development and growth.